Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. The show is very loaded, so we got to get busy one time. The show starts out talking. The title of the show today is The Real Impact of COVID-19 on People, Economy, and Politics. Welcome aboard, my dear brother, El Senor Pallard, and welcome aboard, Heidi Leskin. Welcome aboard. Good afternoon. Folks, keep on coming. Anyhow, title of the show, The Real Impact of COVID-19 on People, Economy, and Politics. I should say people, economics, and politics. I said economy, politics. Anyway, the impact of COVID-19 is real, economically, politically, and socially. Community activist Robby Caban visit, as well as a Pennsylvania couple who saw it up front. Malcolm Rudnin, welcome aboard. Daryl Lissinger, welcome aboard. We must use the rebuilding of COVID-19 to force our leaders into social policies catered to people, folks. In simple terms, we can't let them get away with it again like they did in 2008. We have to decide what the policies are going to be. I'm going to do a cut on Joe Biden, not today, likely tomorrow, where he tries every manner not to justify that COVID-19 shows us the need, why we need a single-payer system. That this organization that we saw from Donald Trump is not solely the fault of Donald Trump. It's going to be easy for us to throw Donald Trump right now. It is easy for us to do that. But Donald Trump is not the sole culprit. It is the current state of the system that we are having. For the momentary pauses, I'm not sure what that is. Try looking at it on YouTube. I'm looking at it at YouTube right now, and I think so far I'm seeing it just fine. But we have been having internet problems. We're going to have somebody. We have somebody that's scheduled to come out tomorrow to see exactly what is going on, if at all they can find it. Anyhow, folks, we cannot allow the repeat of 2008. It is clear. It is clear that America has been gutted by the few. Going forward, it is imperative that we speak. So please, folks, share this stuff. If you're just joining us, I ask you so kindly to begin the sharing process. That is how we are going to ensure that people start activating themselves. Welcome aboard, Avon Gian Q. Welcome aboard. That is how we are going to ensure, folks, that going forward, we get the things that we want. Not only that we want, that is owed us. When I say owed us, remembering that we are the system, we are the creators, we are the ones who have created this system. Billionaires, all that good stuff, let's not ever fall into that gap. But anyhow, folks, I want to start with something that Joyanne Reid, a piece that Joyanne Reid did yesterday. I want you to see this because I was happy in the way it went out. Take a look at it and we'll take it on the other side. Joyanne Reid had a segment with Ron and Santa on that I think hits the nail on the head. I want you to listen to it and then let's take it on the other side.
Let's talk about that $500 billion. I think for a lot of Americans, they look at some of these big companies that already got a massive tax break, that took a lot of that tax cut, the Bush, Ryan, McConnell tax cut, and stuffed it in the pockets of their CEOs. They used it to buy back their stock, to plus up their stock price. They, in fact, did not give hardly anything to their workers. They did not use it to hire. It's difficult, I think, to explain to the average person why those people should have gotten any money at all. Why don't they just use the money that they got back from that tax cut?
Well, there's some problems here. I mean, the money, number one, has been spent, or they borrowed the money in order to finance the stock buybacks at low interest rates. I was among the people who opposed the Trump tax cut on those very grounds, that the additional monies, the repatriated profits from overseas, would be used to buy back stock, raise dividends, not go into capital expenditures, not go to workers, not go to wages. That turned out, as you said, to be the case. I think now, sadly, it's too late. Do we not prop up the airlines and let them go out of business, or go into bankruptcy proceedings where, again, they'll renegotiate labor contracts with their unions? Or do we simply, bite our lip, as much as we hate to do this, and make sure that our airlines, the critical industry in the United States, don't go away? Do we prop up Boeing with $17 billion, being the nation's largest exporter, around 2 million jobs altogether, when you take into account of the various suppliers that provide parts and services to Boeing? Do we let them go and suffer those 2 million job losses? It's one of those decisions you never want to have to make, and it's the second time now in 10 years that we are making decisions like this. This is going to be such a deep recession, however short it may last, that we, in a certain sense, as we couldn't afford to let the banks fail, we also can't afford to let large corporations fail. There will be strings attached to the money this time around, thank goodness.
Yeah, all the super rich are all socialists when they run out of money. It's funny how that works, right? They think for poor folks it's moral hazard, but for them it's need.
First of all, I kind of get tired of the false premise that we couldn't let the big banks fail, that we can't let the corporations fail. The reality is we can let the structure of those particular entities fail. What we needed to have done, let's say back in 2008, is nationalize the banks. They have proven unworthy of being able to maintain their status. So therefore, they don't have a right to exist. How many of us get second chances? By the way, they're doing the same things again. They're doing the same kind of leveraging again. Now, when it comes to the corporations got these big tax breaks. They always talk about moral hazards. The reason why they don't want to give certain kinds of social structures to the average American citizen is because the potential for moral hazard. Well, there has always been moral hazards in the corporate domain per se. Now, as far as the airline and the big companies are concerned, we don't want them to have to lay off those workers. So yes, we should provide some sort of help. But here's the help that we need to start taking seriously. If we put money into these particular airlines and other major corporations, then the state, the shareholders, we the people, put that money into the corporations and make them whole. But we own portions of it. We the people. If we the people are providing the money, we the people can own parts of it, which means also we the people make a portion of the profits, which can go back into our coffers and which can take care of a whole lot of great issues for the American citizens. Medicare for all, family leave, student debt relief. There's a whole lot of things we can do. They faltered. They got $1.5 trillion. They never put that money back into the economy. Instead, they kept it for a few by inflating the price of stocks with stock buybacks and giving great bonuses to their people. They do not deserve unwarranted help. What they deserve is, yes, to stay alive, not for the executives, but to stay alive for the workers. And then in the process, we the people take partial ownership of these corporations. And then when the profits come in from these corporations, we take those profits for the social state, where we can take care of people and make people's lives much better. No longer the 1% gets all the profit out of the labor of us all. That is what we can use right now. We can use this downturn. We can use the help that we have to give to these corporations, a structural method to finally have a way that what we all work for, we can benefit from. I hope you got that. What we all work for, we can benefit from. They say, oh, are you going to not give the corporations the money and let them die and hurt all these people? No. Give them the money. But give them the money as a part of you owning that corporation, and then the profits then will be split proportionally. We can put that right back into the coffers of the American people, and now we have a state where we are owned. Some of it is owned by the corporation, some of it is owned by the state, and that a mass of money that they constantly extract comes right back to us. Now, we need to have somebody out there who can fight. Somebody who is willing to put some skin in the game. Somebody who is willing to work with us. That is what we were hoping, that we got a presidential candidate to do so, right? But, I was watching Meet the Press. And Meet the Press had Biden on. And I think, I wonder sometimes, maybe Nancy Pelosi should run for president, okay? I have some issues with Nancy Pelosi. But I tell you what, listen to this, because this is very important. I think we can all agree that the president has completely mismanaged the coronavirus crisis, pandemic. I think it is clear that because he waited, hoping that somehow it would go away, like a child not looking at the way math works, how science works, that things just don't go away. I think it is clear that the president, because of his lack of leadership, has caused the death of many Americans. We would have had this stuff much better contained absent a derelict president. Now, the question was asked to Joe Biden on Meet the Press. Hey, do you think the president has blood on his hands? And I want you to see the difference between a response from a Joe Biden, and let's listen to how Joe Biden responds to it, and then we'll move on from there.
Your campaign put out in a critique of President Trump and says if he doesn't do these things, he could cost lives. Do you think there is blood on the president's hands, considering the slow response? Or is that too harsh of a criticism?
I think that's a little too harsh. I think what's happening is the failure to, as I watched a prelim to your show where someone said that, used the phrase that the president just thinks out loud. He should stop thinking out loud and start thinking deeply. He should start listening to the scientists before he speaks.
Now, he had the perfect opportunity. He didn't have to say the president has blood on his hands or anything like that. He could say, I can understand that statement, Chuck, but let me tell you, it is true that because of the lack of leadership, we have actually caused the death of several dozens, if not more, Americans, because we allowed it to spread, knowing that it was there, without most Americans knowing it was there. Well, look at how Nancy Pelosi handled that.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says President Trump's slow response to the pandemic is to blame for the growing death rate in the U.S., which has now reached 2,400 people.
His denial at the beginning was deadly. His delaying of getting equipment to where it continues, his delay in getting equipment to where it's needed is deadly. But as the president fiddles, people are dying.
As the president fiddles, people are dying. She wasn't mean about it. She just stated a statement of fact. And we couldn't even get that out of Joe Biden. It is too harsh. Come on, Joe. We are fighting a president who has no problems telling the people who are doing the right things that somehow they're doing it wrong. And you are going to be there in defense of Donald Trump? Are we simply about to coalesce into the belief that this is the president we want? All right, folks, please do remember, if you're just joining us, share, and share. We have to get this information. We have to get this empowerment to everybody. We need to make sure that folks are listening to an alternative. We need to make sure that folks are hearing this stuff. But as you can see, yeah, Joe Biden said, oh, no, that's too hard. That's too harsh. No, this is not. If you want somebody there for you, you want somebody who's going for the jugular. This is no longer the time where you can just sit back. Come on, folks. Let's get this right, okay? Anyhow, the next interview that I'm doing is with Robby Caban. She's an activist out in Atlanta, Georgia. I've had her on before. She's a person that ran around to the studios of what's his name studios, where he built it in a poor neighborhood, and it turns out that all's happening to the neighborhood is now that it's getting gentrified. But anyhow, so she's an activist, and she's not looking only at the coronavirus, but how it actually impacts the socioeconomic being of Atlanta. So let's do that, and then we'll take it on the other side. So here is Robby Caban. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm honored here to have the one and only Robby Caban. She's a community advocate, a public speaker, a real estate expert out there in Atlanta who gets in a whole lot of trouble for telling the truth a bit too often. But you know what? She's the kind of woman that we want out there in Atlanta. Robby Caban, welcome once more to Politics Done Right. How you doing today?
As always, thank you for having me. Feel very fortunate to, given all the circumstances.
Well, you know, you're into real estate, and how is let's talk about how the quarantine is affecting you personally first, and then we'll move on to how it sort of affect the rest of the community. So, how is it personally affecting Robby Caban?
Well, I have to admit that I'm pretty much living like someone who's privileged and elite. You know, because I work from home, that didn't change. Because I create my own schedule with clientele, that didn't change. I don't have access the way people outside, you know, the way we used to. But it really, in reality, the people hit the worst are most vulnerable, because people like me are gainfully employed, who have a home. We can be it's an inconvenience, but we can be comfortable inside our homes. People who don't have homes, people who are non-living wage workers.
I want to hold back on that right now, because you've gotten into a whole lot of trouble for really pushing that out, and I want to take that a little bit later. What I want to handle is right now, as it turns out, because you work from home, things haven't changed much for you. What about for taking your clients to see homes, etc.?
Well, you know, people still want to purchase, because a lot of our folks are paying more in rent than they would to own a home. But they're extremely frustrated because, like many cities, Atlanta has an affordability crisis that the elected officials haven't really addressed with meaningful preventable solutions, even though they're out there. And so I'm taking clients out, and they're basically feeling very hopeless and disappointed because we're not able to keep them in the city due to our rising home prices.
Excellent. Now, one of the issues, and I follow what you're doing and what a lot of other activists out there are doing, and you're sort of those special activists, because you're in a profession where you can get into a lot of trouble into trouble for saying things that people see but refuse to say. I think recently you've been called racist and all this kind of stuff because you've decided to challenge the mayor of Atlanta and others because of something you said earlier. Why the hell in this situation aren't we taking care of the most vulnerable when those who can have a real estate license and move around at will don't have a problem? Expand on that for me.
Well, so I have gotten into trouble. I don't think I actually challenged the mayor. I think we were trying to provide solutions, but oftentimes when you're attempting to have this dialogue, reaching our public officials, they may interpret it as a challenge. Of course, there's always this intersectionality with race and class that people sometimes read into why we're critiquing when there are valid reasons why we're critiquing. And in this particular circumstance, besides my work, right, because they're brokerages, they're GREC, which is the Georgia Association of Realtors, they're people that I have to answer to as a licensee. Luckily, I own my own firm, so I've created that protection because in the past, when I've discussed problematic happenings, people have reported me, and I've had to, mutate my business to be viable. In terms of our Mayor Bottoms, she's gone public on really providing accolades to Joe Biden, stating that she believes she's campaigning for him, stating that he was open to listening and that that's an important part of leadership. And I found that baffling because we went to one of her town halls. I went as really a whistleblower. Myself and other people were there, and we told her that there were a lot of problems on the south side of Atlanta, really just because of our history. We have antiquated systems that at one time were really racially divided that are still impacting today. And that includes the real estate industry. That includes our travel industry and the way that our airport works. That includes predatory practices that are impacting not only public safety, but Atlanta taxpayers. And one of the issues that has arisen become very apparent out of this virus is that the right? The people who don't have the protections, the people living on the fringes, the homeless, the people on living, not even making living wage, are carriers or can become carriers, and they can inundate our hospitals. And we have been lobbying City Hall for a basic standard of living, a basic standard of life, a quality of life for everyone, because it affects public safety, because it affects public health, and it has fallen on deaf ears. And our mayor agreed, Mayor Bottoms, to meet with us over 6 months ago with, I mean, literally people who have been terminated out of our airport. Myself, as a real estate expert, and our airport is another very, very problematic, really, in my opinion, operating in a very safe, unsafe, inequitable way that is correctable. And so we're a little pissed off, really, because when our elected official agrees to meet publicly, says that on record, it's filmed, and we follow up literally every 30 days for over 6 months, and it doesn't happen. And now we have this crisis that was avoidable. And now we're subjected to 4,000 unsheltered in Atlanta who nobody even knows where they are. Right? And it's all because we didn't prepare properly, because we don't have a proper engagement system with our elected officials. They don't work with people on ground, and often take offense to us even trying to intervene, even though we're subject matter experts.
And it's interesting because they tried to, in your case, they tried as an advocate, actually for the indigent and all. They tried to apply a racial component onto this because a lot of the leaders in Atlanta are black. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's be clear here. You don't, I mean, I find it ironic that somebody like you have to be out there trying to work with these folks to try to get things better.
Well, let me be very clear on this. The issue that we had regarding housing was an affordability crisis. And there are certain things that can be done. And as a licensee, I'm aware of them because I'm inside the system. And oftentimes when you're inside the system and this is what your money's based on, how you live, people won't speak out against it. I've changed careers multiple times, so I'm not afraid of that. That being said, I kind of can see the whole picture, the public cost. What we were asking for was regulation of the industry to allow inventory so that normal people could buy, instead of creating a whole business off of single family residential. The other thing we wanted was that there are these structures called tiny homes. They're modest. Some of them aren't even.
Very familiar with them. Actually, I like them.
They're a lot better than having people live under bridges, kicking people out of parks.
And they're inexpensive.
They're very inexpensive, and the problem is they're not legal, because we have city policies, ordinances that don't allow them in the city. But really, the people that we have interviewed, engaged with, our advocates, have spoken to many of our homeless who are afraid to go into shelters, because the shelters sleep people in a room, strangers, 200 feet. They're often unsanitary, which we're finding now. They're often run by volunteers. There are often requirements for faith-based.
And they can become breeding grounds.
Exactly, just like our jails now. So this component of, arrest everyone or force them into shelters. No, these are adults who want a basic quality of life, and it begins with housing. And now it's apparent that because our homeless can be carriers, now it's affecting us. And that's really why I said, well, I'm privileged, because our homeless people, our people on living wage, they don't travel. They don't take vacation. They don't go eat. They don't have the money to. Their lives are at risk, but we're the ones. And the funny part, or not the funny, the irony is us privileged folks who have our kids. What do our kids do? They go to the beach, and no one says, where are the parents?
Right.
But we always want to know, where are the parents of our low-income kids? You know where my low-income kids, I don't have kids, but the ones in my community are, they're out selling water. you
Right.
know, on the streets of Atlanta because their parents don't make a living wage. And it, when you talk about race, it's fascinating because we have our largest employer, our airport, Hartsfield Jackson, that Maynard Jackson created these contracts with, but they are leaving out a whole mass of people that all live in Fulton and Clayton County on the south side.
And who are those people?
The people who make that airport run are predominantly black. It's to your point on making this a racial issue. What our corporations do is, in my opinion, use marketing to create an identity that seems like it supports civil rights, but then in action, in mass action, have subcontracts on the cleaners, the caterers, the people who keep the whole operation going.
Keep
And
them
they,
at a substandard level. Now, you said something yesterday when we spoke that really touched about the marketing campaign of Delta when what's the guy who died, the civil
Joseph
rights,
Lowery.
right? Tell me that. Tell me about that.
Well, this is not the first time. You know, the company, the corporation, you know, that has corporate personhood, and it's a huge, over 70,000 employees. You know, the structure of the company is very inequitable. They have our elected officials. I'm sorry, they have our executives who have contracts, and they have our pilots who are predominantly male, who are predominantly Caucasian, all protected with representation, and everyone below them who are predominantly female or people of color are not. What that does is when you have churn around times, and I used to work for this company, so I'm very familiar with the operation in multitudes of areas. When people are sent to Latin America to clean, that airplane bathroom might have been used 300 times by people. Okay, all those tray tables need to be wiped, all those pillow covers, all those blankets need to be shifted out. But when you only put 30 minutes and are paying minimum wage, do you really think that it's getting sanitized?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so because of profit, we're allowing the airlines to operate in a way that doesn't put the protection on a public health factor. We're allowing that. And because no one has those protections below those two protected parties, those people cannot organize and protect themselves for a living wage, which is why at our airport, we have people who don't even make $15 an hour. And it's their kids who are selling water on the sides of the street in Atlanta, and they are predominantly black. And for me to say that and critique our mayor for not meeting with us when she agreed to, and she's under the assumption, she's bought the belief that this corporation, because they put Joseph Lowery a memorial of him on an airplane, or because they donate to the Civil Rights Museum, or because, you know, they have Maynard Jackson exhibits throughout the airport showcasing civil rights, you know, and their marketing showcases this, that it doesn't matter that the workforce that are people of color are not even making a living wage.
It is sad because that is done with Delta, that is done with all these corporations. That is the reason why somehow Biden gets a pass when you have people in South Carolina. Oh, black people think that that Joe Biden is the guy to do it. I mean, it is amazing how that is done. But Robby, in closing, what I'd like to talk to you about again is, now overall, I've been talking to people all over the country with regards to how the coronavirus has been affecting their area. Yesterday, I spoke to somebody in the Poconos in Pennsylvania who had some experiences. In closing, what can you tell me is the experience as you see in Atlanta? I can tell you in Houston, here we are all but shut down. There's very little traffic. There's almost no activity. How is it over there in Atlanta?
Well, the traffic is certainly easier, but people are still going out. The mayor is requesting. We don't have a state ordinance of shutdown. And that's because a lot of our rural counties aren't as dense as the city, right? But we're not prepared. We know this. Our hospitals are not at capacity. And I guess the one thing I want to add to in regards to your question on this corporate personhood, you know, regular people who make a living, right? I have some money saved in case things go wrong because I've been fortunate, right, in my business. And when I look at these corporations with a handout now, asking for money when they've been in the green for a decade since their last bailout. Meanwhile, they haven't been paying a living wage to people right here in the city. And our folks our elected officials are so willing to cut that money. And I'm baffled on how. I
Exactly. And they got a 1.5. You said since their last bailout was really actually a year and change ago when they got $1.5 trillion in tax relief.
Well, and so I have to wonder, do they not understand what's really happening at the airport? Our city council president was just on live and said the airplanes aren't flying. That's not true. They're flying cargo. It's almost as if they don't even know what's
They know it, people don't, and that is why we need independent media. Most people think the planes are not carrying people. Most people think that this thing about having you carry one bag on the plane is mostly to help out the airline and save costs. Is just to make those cargo holds a lot more valuable. And that is exactly what they do.
Well, now, in my business, we negotiate. And I go back and forth with a represented party for the interests of my party. I want our elected officials to negotiate on our behalf. You've received this money, which really should have been a loan. Now you will pay our residents and citizens a living wage.
Amen.
You will provide medical to people earning over 40 hours and let them have an option out. You will not retaliate against people who organize for labor like Yvette Avery. Shout out to Yvette Avery. And they should be represented because it does affect public health. You and me, we shouldn't have to pay for another crisis to a billion-dollar company, applaud a 6-month salary reduction to a CEO, which really is a farce. It's to make us feel better. Because the reality of the numbers, look at what's happened. 10 years of profit, and you're asking for money because you didn't put money away? How responsible is that?
Robby L. Caban, advocate, community advocate, public speaker, activist. Very good one. Thank you so kindly for being with Politics Done Right. Trust me, the coronavirus gives us the opportunity to start over. We need to hear your voice out there. We need to hear the voice of all these activists who can be there to enlighten folks to start demanding, not asking, demanding what ours, demanding when this economy is put back together, that we just don't maintain the status quo, that we move forward and have an economy that works for us all. Robby L. Caban, thank you so kindly for having been with us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Alberto.
Welcome. Okay, folks, that was Robby L. Caban, activist from Atlanta, Georgia. Now, the next one that I'm putting out here is from a couple in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. This story, I think, is going to sort of blow your mind. Check this out. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. Folks, today we have a story to tell you. Diana Cruz and William Kohler, also known as Bill, is going to talk to us about an event at a hospital, but it's deeper than that because they have an entire medical issue within the family, but still they couldn't get the type of service, the type of responses one would expect at a hospital. So, guys, how are you doing? Diana and Bill, how are you doing today?
All right, Alberto. Good to see you.
Good to be. Yeah.
Well, look, let me first tell you, thank you guys for giving me a few minutes of your Saturday to tell me your story. Diana, you were on Tim Black's show and you were mentioning an incident with your husband that occurred at the hospital. And when I heard the story, I must admit, I cringed. But why don't you start the story and then let Bill continue with what occurred when he got to the hospital?
Absolutely. So if you go back to the Monday before that Sunday, our son wasn't feeling well. So he had taken him to the emergency room just to make sure that he was okay. He was having some gastro issues. Then fast forward to Wednesday, a couple of days, later, we took him to the gastro at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So we're explaining this to the doctor. We explained that because they have to understand that we have been in contact with other people. So we have been to the hospital. He was feeling fine. He was okay. Friday hit. Here he goes coughing. He had a fever. He was just incoherent. He was, it was bad. He was having chills. Saturday comes around, it has not changed. It just got worse. So then I told him, first thing Sunday morning, you're going to the emergency room because we need to figure out what's going on. And especially with this coronavirus, we were scared because our daughter has no immune system. Now, Sunday morning.
Explain that to people, because some people may not understand what you mean by your daughter.
So our 10-year-old, when she was 2.5, she was diagnosed with cancer, with leukemia. She was diagnosed with a rare strand of leukemia. So her cancer came back. Well, from the very get-go, she had to have relapse medicine, which is, what you give a cancer patient that has relapse, which is stronger than regular chemo. So she was receiving that from day one, which is also the time we found out we were pregnant with baby number 6, the same day. It was terrible.
Wow.
Yes, it was terrible. We weren't expecting that. We were one of those couples that we own our business. We just bought a house. We were doing amazing. So 9 months later, we had our son. And I think a week or 2 weeks later, we found out she relapsed on relapse medication. So you can imagine that was just
devastated.
It was devastating for us. She had to be transported because she was dying. At the time, she had a really high fever and she was dying. We had no idea. And she was transported to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is how we became acquainted with them, because at that time she will need a bone marrow transplant because it was that harsh. Now my husband, as you can see, we're not the same race. He's German and Italian, and I am Dominican. So it's hard to find a match for someone like us, for our daughter. She was on the registry. We couldn't find one. So we did something that's called a haploid transplant, which is one of the parents, which is more dangerous because as a regular transplant, you need like a 7 out of 10 in order to do a regular transplant. And that you can never find that within family members because your child is not even half of you, because we are all mixed somewhere down the line. So I remember they took my blood and they said, Mom, we're not going to do you because you have 6 children. So your antibodies, they're super strong on you. But we're just going to take your blood work just in case. Well, it came back that I was a 6th, right?
6, yeah.
I was a 6 out of 10 match for my daughter. So I became her donor. That was something that was never seen before. It was something that was very rare because, us Dominicans, we're mixed with everything. So I'm imagining that, hey, maybe I have some of his lineage, some of, German or whatever inside of me, which is why I became such a
high match
for her. She did her transplant, and you have to understand that a transplant, it is so dangerous. They tell you your child can die. Which is true. We have met so many kids on the cancer unit, and our child is the only one that has survived from our. Yes. Now, during transplant, because it's so intensive, she received an infection, and which killed her B cells. Was it?
Yeah.
Her B cells. She's not able to produce them. So now she has to fast forward to, she's cancer free now. She's 6 years cancer free. Thank the Lord. She's not out of the woods, of course, because you're never out of the woods. But she has no immune system because of it. She can't produce her own B cells. She can't fight antibodies. Yes. So she can't fight anything. So she has to do immunoglobulins every week. So she has to have an IV put in. Preferably for her is her stomach. So I'm her nurse. So I have to put in 2 needles in her stomach. Subcu, how do you say that? Subcu is subcu. And the IV runs for like about 2 to 3 hours. So this is what she does every week to keep her alive because she's not allowed to have any vaccines. Her body just can't.
Right.
Yes. Now, when it comes to the flu, we do take precautions because of the flu.
She gets the flu.
She gets the flu back. Yeah,
she's able to get that back.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mandatory in our house because of her. We do take every illness serious, every little things that you can imagine.
She
have to.
Yeah.
Everything she gets like to the max. Like,
Yes.
Right.
Played with somebody like last year. She played with somebody that had chicken
during the
pox.
summer.
and she ended up with the shingles.
Yeah.
The kids somehow picked up mono, and she ended up with chronic pain from the mono.
She's still dealing with that.
And we're still, it's just
So in your house, it is extremely important that you guys are diagnosed appropriately as well.
Oh, absolutely,
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's the. I mean, I probably typically would not even go to the hospital to get checked up on. I mean, I know with this coronavirus thing, it's very important now, but typically, if I got sick, I can get through it. You know, but now that we have someone that is extra special in the household that needs us to be careful, every time we get sick, we try to make sure we follow the appropriate measures so we don't pass it to her or things get to her and make her any worse than what she's already going through.
Absolutely. So we come to the story as far as that. So she's an immunosuppressed is what they call it, right? Because of her drugs?
Yes.
Yeah. And she's 3 years cancer free. So she's
6 years.
I'm sorry. Yes. 3 years considered a survivor. So
1 year considered survivor.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I mixed it up. That's what the reason I'm saying is I mixed it up when I was in the hospital too. I was a little delirious. See the video. I was very sick, and she had the transplant years ago. She passed her milestone, and she's been cancer free for the last year.
That is wonderful, and you don't want to do anything to mess with that, to create any shocks in her body that's going to exacerbate or cause something. So continuing that, then, so you went to the hospital.
Yeah,
I dropped him off at the door. I said, because we both were now going to go into the emergency room. I waited in the car while he was inside, and I deliberately told him, "You better make sure they test you for this. Be aggressive," because sometimes I feel like he's not aggressive enough. So I'm a Hispanic woman. Come on. So
Mi Latina favorita.
right?
All the time.
Yeah. So I was like, you better make sure you tell them they need to test you because they need to make sure that you don't have this virus or any form of it. Because come on, it was like overnight. I'm telling you the timeline, and from the time he went to the hospital, from the time he's feeling bad. That is just instant, and it doesn't happen that way.
I've had the flu before. I never got that sick that fast. So,
right.
So she dropped me off. I went in. I got told the emergency nurse what was going on, and she was pretty receptive. She didn't give me any problems. Put the mask on. They called me back pretty fast. It seemed like they escalated me to get back there pretty fast, which I thought they were taking this serious. I get back in the room. He comes in, and he tells me we're gonna, we'll check out the doctor, and it says we're gonna check out and see if you have the flu. And I said, well, what about the coronavirus? You gonna check that too? He goes, first thing out of the guy's mouth is that's a complete hoax. And
the doctor said that.
Yes, yeah. That was about 2.5 weeks ago. And I said, hey man, they just declared a state of emergency up in New York.
Because you have to understand, he works in New York.
Yeah.
Right.
So
wow.
So I'm like, how can you say it's a hoax? And
Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt you again because I want to make America understand this for real. You're telling me a doctor in the ER in Pennsylvania in the Poconos told you that it was a hoax.
Flat out said those words to me.
And it wasn't a rinky-dink hospital.
So yes, that's what he said. And I looked shocked. So what I did was I was like, okay, my wife's gonna kill me if I don't get tested for this thing. She threatened me in the car. I'm gonna ask the next person to come in here. What do you mean it's a hoax? And basically, the next person who came in not only reiterated that she didn't believe in it as well. She kind of made me feel foolish for even asking, or people that were being a bother by even asking about this. Meanwhile, on the news, you're seeing about people dying in China, dying in Iran, dying in Italy, and getting worse in New York. And I'm thinking to myself, like, the questions you're being asked have you ever been to any of those countries or been anyone that's been near those countries? How the heck do I know? It seems like it's very highly contagious. So who's to say who's been where that I got next to? And you'll hear the lady say, unless you're brushing up on that person and right on top of them, you're not going to get it.
Bill, the thing that really concerned me about that is the way she described transmission of the virus. First of all, there are a lot of studies that are done now that says the virus lives on metal for several hours. The virus lives on your clothes for 6 hours. The virus can go past 10 feet. And what I heard her tell you is that unless you are in close contact and rubbing up against somebody, you're likely not to get the coronavirus. Did I get that correctly?
That's what she said, and not only that, she again reiterate this whole thing is stupid. Is I think was her exact words. So, yeah, that's you'll hear the concern in my voice is, how do I know if I've been near anybody with it if nobody's even testing anybody? I don't understand how you guys. I mean, I don't have the med degree or anything like that, but common sense tells you if you're not testing anybody, then you're not going to know who you're next to that has it. And that's what I was trying to get at. Before I got out of that hospital, my wife was like, "How come you didn't get tested?" So she told me, which made sense to me at the time. Again, I was kind of out of it. We're going to test you for the flu, then strep, see if that's it. If that's the case, then you're done, you're out.
Which, by the way, because he pushed the envelope, because you have to understand, we trust doctors to a certain extent because we had a really bad experience with. We used to have 7 children. Yes. And that's a story for another day. But the hospital pretty much killed our son.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And so we kind of tend to question doctors now. You know, we don't go in blindly and just not question anything that comes out of their mouth because of our history with a certain hospital and the way that they handle our child. Now, trust me, it's not fun watching our child pass away.
Our guards are up already, and we really count on the doctors for giving us advice, but you know, we question it, and then that's why again I get the video and I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm going through this again. And yeah, it's scary because that's the message. If you talk to other people, they're getting the same. They go in and they're not getting tested. They're being told, you know, they haven't been near someone near Iran, or this is 2.5 weeks ago. You haven't been near somebody from Iran or Italy. You need to go. And basically, my gut feeling is they just didn't have the tests. They didn't have them, and they were letting people walk out of the hospital not tested, and then you know just letting it get worse before it could get
right. Unfortunately, go ahead. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Diana.
So then, if you fast forward to the next day, well, you know, maybe 2 days later, he's still not feeling well. They told him he can go. Well, first of all, because of this, he pressured them. And so they did an x-ray and it came out that he has double pneumonia. First of all, how on earth do you get double pneumonia that quick?
Right.
It's not possible in my mind. We have kids who have pneumonia in the past. I don't think it's possible. So that was my concern. The next thing you know, I wake up sick because they told him he can go back to work, by the way. That was on Sunday. They told him he can go back to work on Wednesday. Yes. So my husband was working that Wednesday. He went back to work, not feeling well, no double pneumonia, sent him home with antibiotics. That was it. Which, by the way, he has insurance and he had to pay $100 for his deductible just to get the flu medicine. Yeah.
Yeah,
that is sad. That just shows you this. First of all, it shows you the state of our healthcare system itself, but it also shows you a certain disregard for health. I mean, that the scariest part of this whole conversation, the nurse is scary, but that the doctor said that, and by the way, I am with you as far as double checking the doctor. My daughter had a stroke about 3 months ago, 28 years old. And she's doing fine now. Most of her vision is back and everything else is working fine. Her mind is fine. But had she not been her own advocate, like you guys are with your kids now, like you guys are with yourself, she would have been in trouble. So, I mean, your story, I think, is so important, William and Diana, because a lot of people just haphazardly go see a doctor, and whatever the doctor say, respective to how they feel, they just assume the doctor is right, not understanding that our insurance system forces doctors many times not to do their job as they know it should be done.
Absolutely.
And it's a trickle-down effect. It starts from our leader, the president, and if he's not taking it serious and saying it's not as bad as it is, it trickles down to other people, like the people that are taking care of us. Not everybody. There's some really good people that are fighting and trying to keep people safe. But you got others that do believe it, and it's not, it's not right, because as my wife had told you, it's been a long history of keeping my daughter safe and trying to protect her, and we trust the doctors, and maybe some people don't see this as serious because they don't have somebody that it will affect as bad as it would we do. But it was a hard road. We've been through so much to try to get to this point, and to be denied just to get the corona test. It doesn't make sense to me when it's so fatal to children and adults like my daughter. And we should have been given that with no circumstances.
Absolutely, Bill. I wanted to just get your human story, your health story, because when we're talking about something this serious, a lot of times people say, well, when you bring in the political, but as you can see, the name of this show is Politics Done Right.
Mhm.
I'm just happy that you pointed that out without me bringing that up in the first place.
Well, I
That
mean,
it starts on top.
Very political, because we were not political before 2016.
Uh-huh.
We became political during 2016, during Bernie's era, the first time around, simply because Medicare for all is super important to us.
Right.
It's we have to live in poverty. It's by choice at this time, because our daughter needs her medical insurance, which she receives through SSI.
Right.
Don't get that much. She gets probably like 200 and something, I believe it is. But it's not the point. It's the insurance, because even SSI doesn't cover everything. And so we have to, and SSI doesn't allow you to go past a certain limit, a certain
Right.
amount.
I can only make so much money.
Yeah.
right?
So
and then
yeah.
we're at the mercy of trying to get my daughter onto another insurance that she has right now. She takes $150,000 worth of medication per year at this point right now. That's just one medication.
That's just one.
And for us to try to switch insurances and get off and move, it's never.
It's impossible. Let me. I mean, we are going now from this corona issue that we started this discussion with to something that is much deeper, and I'm glad that you brought that up. And if you have another few minutes to talk about that, because you have just raised my ire one other level. First of all, $150,000 in medication is high robbery by pharmaceutical companies. That
One
there's
medication.
Yeah, that's
for
just-
one medication, $150 a year.
Yeah.
Nobody can.
Helping her grow, because she's not growing, the inside's not growing or anything, because the radiation, she has
Right.
to have body radiation, it stunts everything. So now she's on this medication that she has to have every day. She has to have a needle, and that's just the one that she doesn't really need. I mean, she needs it, but she doesn't need it as much as the one that's keeping her alive.
That's not including the cost of the IVIG. I'm sure that's an astronomical number as well.
And what is a shame is that, Bill, you want to go out there and do your thing, but you are forced to, as Diana just said, you are forced to live in poverty as you are a productive citizen who wants to be, who can be more so than you are because of the healthcare system that we have.
I've turned down at least 2 to 3 jobs in my field to making substantial more money because
And I have turned down a few jobs as
because
well.
I'm nervous that I won't be able to get the medical care, the medical insurance I need to continue her care. So we are where we're at right now, and we have to be comfortable, which we are because it's our daughter. But
there's
we
days
know
that we can't even put food on the table. There, our kids eat. They don't know that we don't eat. They don't know that we go hungry, because our daughter's life is more important, than us having to just, we're just surviving, and people don't get that. We're just surviving. My husband makes as much as he makes. He makes $50,000 a year. I work as well, and it's just ridiculous, the fact that we want to make more. But the first thing they tell you at the hospital, once your child becomes ill with something like this, is no matter what you have to get on SSI. You have to. There's no ifs and buts about it, because SSI is the only one that covers everything.
It's the only one that can afford it, because the regular health insurance will not do it, because they are there to make money off of you.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And if you're talking about the pharmaceutical charging them $150,000 for one medication, what else is there?
And the doctors at this is a different hospital. Those doctors knew it as soon as we walked in the first day we found out my daughter had leukemia. They're like, Mr. Collier, you have insurance, but you're probably gonna lose your job. Your wife might lose her job.
Which
this
we
is a long
did.
battle.
Which we did.
We're got to get you onto the state insurance. You qualify for it. This is your income.
Hold on, let me see if I understand that right. The doctors told you, because your daughter was diagnosed with leukemia, that more than likely, since companies have group plans, that they are going to find a way to get rid of you.
Uh,
So,
he didn't particularly say that. They said that the cost for us will be substantial.
Yeah.
We're better off being on government insurance, and they made the necessary changes so that we could be. That's the road they felt that we would be
because they
more
said that
likely
it
to
wasn't
succeed
it's
on.
not it wasn't going to be covered completely. All her treatments were not going to be covered completely, and our out-of-pocket expenses will have been way too much because of the insurance that we were on. Because you have to remember, again, we were that family that was set. We had a brand new house, we had a job, we had our own business, we had everything. We were set, and then everything went downhill from there
because of healthcare.
Well, yeah, because she got cancer
because
and
she got cancer.
it was bad.
Yeah.
My wife and I both ended up losing our jobs. It's nothing that you can be prepared for.
No, it's not.
We almost had our house foreclosed. We ended up having the car repoed. And it was all not even a question of what we could handle before her being sick. We were fine, but because of taking care of my daughter and making sure we were there for her and making sure that we took the most out of each day that we got to spend with her during that time, our financial situation got bad.
We ended up having to live out of the hospital a few times because she almost died on us a couple of times. She did. It was that dire to the point that at some point I kicked out the priest. Told him, my daughter's not dying. Please leave my room. Don't even come back. It's not even happening. And they told us that she had a 17% chance of surviving even after the transplant.
Wow.
Because of how dangerous, the particular strand of leukemia she had. And it was really bad. It was really bad. And we don't want to go back to that. We don't want to lose her insurance. So, we don't qualify for food stamps because we're one of those special cases that doesn't qualify for anything but medical assistance,
Right.
And we can't make more money. So we are just like stuck in limbo.
Yeah, believe me, our wish was that we don't need any assistance. Believe me.
Yes.
I love the work. My wife loves the work. We've been very successful at work.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is not to sit on a system.
No.
But we don't think we were given any choices to be able to succeed.
You had no choice. I mean, to put it bluntly, you had no choice. And this is what America needs to understand. America needs to understand these stories. These are the stories that our system need to have flowing. And these are the stories that rarely get enough attention on the mainstream media.
We haven't technically been diagnosed with coronavirus in this household. We don't really know if we did because we were denied the test. I wish we knew, but we've been taking the proper precautions here to make sure that it's spread throughout the family. But I was pretty sick. I feel better. But I still have problems in my chest with the pneumonia. My wife was sick as well. And really, after calling the Department of Health, I didn't find it. They told me I could pay for it out of my pocket if I wanted the test.
Which we were prepared to.
We were going to, but they retracted that and didn't even give me an avenue to do that. So at this point, we thought it was best to self-quarantine and keep everybody in the household safe with what's going on right now. And it's kind of been working.
Diana Cruz and William Kohler, Bill Kohler.
Yes,
Look,
sir.
thank you so kindly for giving me this time. Thank you so kindly for telling your story to show Americans really what's going on in this country.
Really appreciate your time.
Your
Roberto. Thanks for reaching out.
Yes, and putting a spotlight to this problem.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. We are coming to the end of the show. Anyhow, let me first tell you, please do remember that this is a show that needs your support. So please go ahead and visit our store at store.politicsdoneright.com. Again, that is store.politicsdoneright.com. Please support us. Now, there are other avenues in which you can support us. You can go to support us via our become a patron by subscribing to the show. To become a patron, go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Again, that is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. You can also contribute to the show by going to our PayPal. Our PayPal is at paypal.me/politicsdoneright. Again, that is paypal.me/politicsdoneright. patreon.me/politics done right. And again, please don't forget, we have a whole lot of stuff at the store. If you're not on a podcast, if you're listening to us on the Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, or Twitch, you can see the different things that we have, the nice t-shirts, the book, the mugs, all that good stuff. You can support us by subscribing to patreon.com/politics done right. That's patreon.com/politics done right. You can support us as well at paypal.me/politics done right, or you can shop at our store.politicsdoneright.com. Folks, this is how we're going to get the information out. We are at an impasse with the economy down right now. We need to ensure that when we inflate this economy, it's not inflated in a status quo manner. That we inflate this economy with people power. And the only way we can get to people power is ensure that people understand how the system really works, make sure that people understand their own worth, and make sure that people, not in understanding their own worth, will demand what is theirs, will demand an equitable society. We're not asking for people who are not working to somehow be given things. What we're asking for is, let's make this a real meritocracy. Let's give everybody access to success, and we can only do that if we do things right. Before I go, just let me call folks out. Rudnin, welcome aboard. Pollard, Heidi Ruskin, Dada Lessinger, Avangian. Let's see, a lot of people. Wow, Gregory Bartz. Let's see, bear with me as I scroll down, but I'm out of time. Moshin, El, Mitch, Jerry. We also have Delphine Chimbakala. Welcome aboard. And for anybody that I forgot, forgive me, but we are got to be out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I close this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.